What's going on, guys? It's Rogan here, and welcome to week four. Yeah, week four of
Yes.
Overwatch League predictions. We're finally here at the June Joust, and there are a couple, well, quite a few teams, well, a couple of teams actually, that have made it that nobody really expected to. We're gonna be here to break down who's gonna go and who's gonna actually win the tournament. As you can see, we have our bracket here. This is gonna be an interesting one, cause there's clearly there are two teams that are clear favorites, but I feel like the two favorites are starting against each other here.
I mean, yeah, and even if you look at just outside the tournament, so like yesterday during Knockout Sunday, I think there were clear favorites going into Knockout Sunday, especially in the West region with number one and number two. And then we immediately saw them get knocked out on Sunday in pretty quick fashion, too, not even, putting up a fight or anything.
Yeah, Atlanta Reign just steamrolled through Boston and then San Francisco, and Dallas Fuel just sped run Houston. They dropped one map to LA, but they won 3-1. It was still quite a convincing victory. In the East region, New York Excelsior actually managed to weasel their way into fourth spot because the Philadelphia Fusion decided to drop a map against the Valiant. So everybody's pick'ems got boomed there.
Hmm.
But we're gonna break down these teams that are in the knockout stages, and I'm gonna start with the first game where we have New York Excelsior versus Atlanta Reign. As I said before, New York Excelsior haven't really come into this tournament off the best form. I mean, they're 2-2. They beat the Fusion, and one other team. I forget the other team they got. But this team is very much built around. I mean, this whole team is good, but like it's very much Jonak on the DPS going through. I mean, the tanks on their day can be very good, but when you look at this team, the two interchangeable DPSs are what you look at because they have two dedicated pairs that they can do, and they both work really well together. And then you got Jonak and Friday. Bianca and Yakpun are good on their day, but they can quite easily be deffed by a lot of different other tank duos in the league.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I think everybody proved their worth, even though I didn't particularly get to catch any of the games this week. I think they proved their worth against uh, the Spark pretty solidly. I mean, you saw big performances out of everybody, and you've seen all of NYXL really starting to pick up the pace and start to come into their own, especially their two. I know we've talked about it at length. I think now all basically every predictions video, but their two rookies in Flora and Bianca, or I'm sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
Flora and Bianca, they're really starting to come into their own and show off that they have what it takes to be up here in the big leagues with everybody out, with the rest of APAC especially. And you're adding to that people like like you just said, you're adding Jonak to that, you're adding Feather, you're adding Ivy, you're adding Guanbong, and then Yakpung when he's on, he is on, and that's an insane setup for NYXL. And while particularly I don't see them going far in this tournament, it's a good stepping stone for them right now to show and build confidence for these rookies and for some of these maybe what we considered some of the bottom of the barrel players here in Overwatch League to be like we can stand up, we can bring a fight to these top teams, especially these top teams in APAC.
Oh yeah. And I mean, they're going up against the Atlanta Reign, who look like they're on fire, but they do have their weaknesses, and if NYXL can do their homework like they did against the Spark, they could easily have an upset here. They can easily get into the winners finals and possibly go further. It's just about if they can prepare well enough and execute a plan like they did in the regional knockouts. But going over and just touching some more on the Atlanta Reign, they systematically destroyed the Shark in the regional knockouts. There was they did the Shark did obviously they made it close in some of the maps, but this this team is just on fire. I mean, you got Hawk and Gator won two of the best tank duos in the league. And then you got the interchangeable with Pelican, who can either be paired with Edison or Kai. They're just, oh, they're so good. I mean, Massa and Iris, yes. I think maybe their supports are the weakest link in their team, but they're by no means are they bad. They when they show up, they can put in some really good shifts and really good performances. But far and above, as you can see by the MVP of their game. I believe it was against the Shock, yes. Pelican was the MVP, and I believe he might have been. No, Iris wasn't there. But yeah, against the Shock, Pelican was far and above their best player. He's so good on the Echo, and he's so good being flexible on so many different DPS roles.
Yeah, I mean this team has it put together, and I've said it before. As much as we want to, knock Atlanta, especially during that beginning of the May melee where they looked pretty weak, in all honesty, and people were like, maybe the hype for this team wasn't there. Maybe we were wrong in misplacing them. They're I don't want to say their DPS is carrying them, but possibly maybe their DPS is carrying them a little bit, especially Kai and Pelican. But even their tanks look good. And even you said it just a little bit ago. All New York really has to do is just pick on those weak links, and I think that really does come down to their supports. I mean, Masa isn't bad. Iris obviously winning player of the match for their match against Boston, but you have to pick it up in the support area because Pelican, Kai, Edison, Hawk, Gator, they can only take you so far into this tournament to where the XL look like they're rolling on all parts. So they're, you know, we already said it. Jonak looks good. Friday Bianca looked good. And just everybody on XL looks good right now. And if Masa and Iris come out sleeping against the Excelsior, it's gonna bring a different level, and they need to focus on cleaning up where they missed during the Shock games that let Shock keep some of those maps like Hanamura and like Hollywood so close.
I mean, just picking up on that shot game a little bit, that you can lose points to having your team all be respawning and just being body blocked by one character. I mean, yes, that was the only way in or out, but like they could have won that game there and there. I believe the Shock were in overtime at that point, and they got it just by the fact of that one play. So it's keeping the team alive, and obviously, if their entire team hadn't been respawning, maybe if their support could have kept them alive a little bit longer, they could have sealed that Hollywood game out a lot sooner. But we're just gonna have to wait and see if the NYXL can come and do their homework, or if the Atlanta Rain are gonna keep steamrolling through everybody else. But I don't know who to pick for this one. It's gonna be close. You can't write off New York Excelsior by any means, even though they're coming in as probably the underdogs of this entire tournament. We had that with the Dallas Fuel coming in with sixth seed, and they steamrolled the entire tournament in the May melee. So
Yeah, I mean you can never count out the underdogs, and I think just from the past, I think that Dallas kind of bought that idea into everybody's minds that maybe we should look at some of these sixth seeds in the West and some of the maybe fourth seeds in APAC to the point where it might be something that becomes more difficult for these top teams because they come in thinking, well, this team hasn't been as strong throughout all of the qualifiers, and they just barely scratched their way in at the end, especially with Excelsior, because they literally just barely scratched their way in because Philly unfortunately dropped a map to the LA Valiant, where if Philly didn't drop that map, maybe we would have seen Philly instead of the Excelsior, and we'd have a completely different tournament than we do right now.
yeah,
But I, I personally think just from past experiences, I think you have to give it to Atlanta just because of how well they did in regional knockouts and even just how well they did in qualifiers in general. I mean, they put up a fight throughout the whole qualifier.
oh yeah. One thing you do have to keep into account is these are tournament rules, so these are going to be loser picks to map. So if NYXL can possibly play their strengths in the maps, if they lose control the first time, which Atlanta have proven that they're brilliant on control, they 2-0 the Shark, they've 2-0 a lot of different teams on control. If they could then take it and maybe get a favorable map for Assault, they could take a back to map, and then it just depends on who takes control to, I think, who's going to then possibly extend out the series. So I still think Atlanta get it, but I think it's going to be closer. It won't be a 3-0 like they've been doing.
Uh, I really think it's going to be a 3-1 in
Yeah,
Atlanta because even looking at the qualifiers, I know I touched on this briefly, but even looking at the qualifiers, I mean they went 3-1 and they only lost to the number one seed going into Knockout Sunday. They only lost to the Gladiators. That's it.
yeah.
And even then, that Gladiators game, I mean, while it was 3-1,
They still
you have a
beat them.
2-1 on Busan, 4-3 Rialto. The only dominating the Gladiators didn't have a dominating victory that whole match,
Yeah.
really.
And if they can do that against a team that came into this tournament at number one seed, yes, there's always the underdog story, but I just felt like this team is too strong for the New York Excelsior. So yeah, I'm gonna put 3-1, which puts New York Excelsior obviously into the elimination round losers bracket, and obviously Atlanta Reign move on. So going over to our second game, we're gonna decide who goes up against the Reign and who goes up against Excelsior. We have a rematch of the May Melee final, and now it's easy to say, well, Shanghai could steamroll this because they're gonna be wanting revenge for the final, but as Sparkle said in both of their games, it's a Dallas dual meta at the moment. Teams have to adapt to play them. It's not the other way around. They have it working on all cylinders. Its meta is very much in their favor. So it's gonna be hard not to predict Dallas to win in these matches.
Right, but I mean, looking at Dallas as a whole, I know we've been saying that it's a Dallas heavy meta, and that's true. It is a Dallas heavy meta. I mean, this Dallas team looks as put together as some of the top teams have looked every season. And they're proving that. I mean, Jexa looks phenomenal on his Lucio. Fielder looks phenomenal. Hanbin is slowly becoming probably one of the best tanks in the league at this point. You have Sparkle and Doha, two phenomenal DPS, probably one of the best DPS duo in the whole league. And then you're adding Pine to that. And even though we haven't seen Pine yet this season, we know Pine. We've seen what he's done in the past on his Soldier, on some of these other characters that he plays. Pine coming in and bringing another level to this DPS line for the Dallas Fuel is just going to be something that I think should terrify teams for the whole rest of the season, not just this tournament, not just in May, but for the rest of the season, in Summer Showdown, in Countdown Cup, in the playoffs in general. I mean, this team looks almost as put together as the Shock did last season when they won Grands, or as the Shock did in 19 when they also won Grands. It's Dallas's season if they want to take it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you look at this team and you look at like the winners, the loser picks map. If Shanghai want to pick a map that favors long range DPS and which kind of cripples Sparkle and Doha, they have Pine at this point. Pine will be able to play on without high ping, which is one of the reasons he hasn't played so far. They can just sub him in if they go on a map like Dorado. They just sub Pine in, and they fix that issue, and it's essentially taken away Shanghai's advantage of going for this longer range map to try and weaken his team. It's it's gonna be hard for Shanghai to break them down, but then there you can never count out a team that has been as dominant as Shanghai. I mean, is, and I mean they've just added a couple of new recruits into this team as well. I mean, you've got Horu, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, who's just come in. Obviously, he came in from contenders. But you've heard there's a lot of things you've heard about this guy coming into. He's a good DPS player. Then you have Lip Flatter, who have been arguably two of the best DPS duo or the best DPS duo in APAC, possibly the entire league. Izayaki, DJ Gon have been amazing supports. Fate and Void have been they just click together. And I mean, you saw it on I believe it was on Ica World. Fate's Diva is just amazing. And I mean triple kill remake kill is just is insane.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing stopping the Shanghai team since you know finals of May Melee. This team has been on a tear, and I've said it time and time again, and I've said it with Houston the same way. It's the Shanghai train; it just keeps on rolling. there's no stopping this team at this point. There's a reason Fleta won MVP last season, even though their team really didn't make playoffs and didn't really make a statement during the Grand Finals tournament. But even Lip has been great, and you kind of broke this down. Izzyaki looks phenomenal, even though his best hero has been banned this whole tournament. Every qualifier they haven't had Zenyatta, and even the casters have said it. Izzyaki is one of the best Zenyatta's in the league, but he's still looked phenomenal. And that's even without seeing one of the other supports for Shanghai, without seeing Molly at all so far throughout the rest of, June. Who knows what that brings? Having a backup for Lee Jae-gon or Izzyaki, and now also having Woru as a backup for Fleta and Lip. I mean, they really, it's once again, it's Shanghai's tournament to take, just like it's Dallas's tournament to take if they want it.
I think this is going to be another close one, like the main mini. I've bet against Dallas before, and it's bitten me in the ass, and I think this is going to be a 3-2 win for Dallas. But I think Shanghai is still going to go a decent way in this tournament, if not make it to the final again.
I I I think I want to give it to Shanghai here, just because, yes, like I've said, it's Dallas's tournament, Dallas this, Dallas that, adding Pine, this and that. But Shanghai has been dominant. I mean, they've diffed just about every team in APAC at this point. I mean, you saw it with Chengdu, who was considered one of the top contenders in APAC going into June. They 3-0'd Chengdu week 1. It's not as much of a statement, but they 3-0'd Valiant the next week. They only really dropped a map to the Spark, who looked almost perfect going into qualifiers and coming out of qualifiers. Sadly, they lost to the Excelsior because they came out sleeping during Knockout Sunday. But their closest match, from the looks of it, at least from what I'm seeing right now, their closest match was a 3-1 against Seoul, where Seoul only took Anubis by a point. You can't count out that Shanghai Dragons team.
Oh no, and this could go either way really, and it's cruel that they've matched these two teams up in the first winners knockout round, but I mean, it's gonna make for good Overwatch either way. I think this is gonna be the first round winners round one you're gonna want to watch if you're gonna watch either of them. Yes, I know it is on later. It's at 7:30 Pacific time, which I don't know what that is in other time zones, but it,
I
it
believe it's about 8:30 EST.
so even then, if you can't make these streams, they are going to be doing encore streams the next day for anybody who missed them. So definitely watch this Dallas Shanghai game because it will be good. I can almost guarantee that based off the main melee finals. So
Right.
we're gonna go losers and then we'll do the winners because that's gonna decide who goes into grand finals. So I'm gonna leave a little bit of suspense there. Um, New York versus Shanghai. Which will obviously be New York versus Dallas for you. I think I give this to Shanghai 3-1.
And I think I have to give it to Dallas. I mean, listen, even if Dallas drops, which in my mind they do, I don't even think I can give a map to NYXL if Dallas drops down here. If it is like you said, if it is Shanghai, New York, I think New York has more experience against Shanghai than they do against Dallas because they've been playing in APAC for so long. So I think they know what they're going up against in Shanghai, where maybe they can take a map. But either way, I think it has to be a 3-0 or a 3-1, regardless of who drops from that Shanghai Dallas game.
Oh, I mean, talk about your one. I mean, not even the West teams have been able to figure out how to handle Dallas effectively, apart from like the Shock at this point. So to ask NYXL to do that, that's a big ask.
Exactly.
So now we're going to be deciding the first person going into the grand finals. Dallas Fuel or Shanghai Dragons against the Atlanta Reign. I don't know who I want to give this to. I mean, Dallas obviously they've looked great so far, but
Right. But they dropped their match again. I mean, it's not an indicator, to be fair, but they come into this 3-1. They dropped their match against San Francisco in devastating fashion, honestly, where they probably could have won it, realistically. They had all the pieces in place really to beat San Francisco, and they dropped it 3-1. But every match was close. They tied on Anubis. I mean, we talked about this extensively in our breakdown of that week. But to touch on your side especially, I I don't see I don't see Dallas losing to Atlanta. I think Atlanta's had a lot more closer matches than the score might you know than the score might indicate. And I don't think they come out sleeping, but I just think there's a difference between, Atlanta taking on teams like Houston, or not Houston, but like Vancouver, like, I guess, partially like Houston, uh, but especially that Vancouver game and that London game. I think the the Fuel have had a much tougher schedule of qualifiers and even knockouts than I think Atlanta has.
Yeah,
Besides maybe the shock knockout Sunday.
and they kind of come out of that more battle hardened and ready, and they've gotten used to so many different comps at this point, and there's no way that they haven't studied how Atlanta have been playing. And I mean, we've seen it in the way they've adapted to how they've picked up how they put Sparkle on the hit scans if they maybe need a hit scan to take on a specific composition, or switching up some of their other tanks to play different tanks, or the healers how they've adapted coming in from the hero pools. They've just everything that people have thrown at them, aside from that shock game, which they arguably could have won. They've just risen to the occasion every single time. So I think I've got to go. I'm gonna give this three. I want to say 3-0, but hmm,
It's tough. I do think Atlanta can take a map at the very least. If it's not a 3-0, I think it's a 3-1.
yeah,
Just because I think Atlanta has what it takes to take a map, especially with the way that their DPS have been playing, especially recently, the way their DPS have been playing. But I think that comes down to whether or not, for your match, Dallas comes out swinging. And I guess for my losers match too at this point, which I'll get into a little bit once we finish this. But
I think 3-1. I'm gonna go for. So your match, you have the Shanghai Dragons going up against the Atlanta Rain. Obviously Shanghai don't know what Atlanta really's been doing. I mean, they can study the tapes, but they've not come up against a team like Atlanta at this point. But I'll let you break this down a little bit more, considering it's your
I
game.
right, and you brought it up, something that I wanted to bring up. The fact that neither of these teams have seen each other. Yes, they can study all the tape they want, and you said it that, Shanghai doesn't know what Atlanta has. But that goes the same way for Atlanta. Atlanta has not experienced a team like this, maybe besides Dallas, that really can just come out and steamroll anybody they see without thinking twice about it, and can legitimately team diff anybody in the field. And I think that's something that's going to play really well for Shanghai, is the fact that Atlanta is going in sort of blind to the, this basically a winners finals for them, their first winners finals probably since last season. But I really think this lends well for Shanghai, and I think there's just such a difference between what Shanghai brings to the table and what Atlanta brings to the table. Because we even talked about it just now with that Dallas and with the Dallas Atlanta matchup, but the same goes for the Atlanta Shanghai matchup. Even though Shanghai has beaten Chengdu and has beaten, the Valiant and Seoul, and even I believe they beat Philly one week, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know if they ever played Philly, but just the teams that they've played in the qualifiers are so much better than the teams that Atlanta played, that I think it gives them a sense of we're more hardened for this tournament. We're more ready for what this tournament's going to bring than maybe Atlanta is, because Atlanta has played such weak teams like Vancouver, like London, where their only tough game really was Houston. and the Gladiators game that they lost.
Yeah. I mean, I think. I mean, this is my losers. This is my losers final as well. I think. I mean, at this stage, we're essentially predicting the same grand finals as May made it, but I think these two teams that we are seemingly predicting to be in grand finals have just been that strong that they can quite easily just do it again and make it all the way.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Atlanta Dallas match is going to be close. If they're both in losers, at least I think it'll be close. I think it'll be closer to a 3-2 if they're both in losers because they want to prove something. But if they're in winners, I think it's a 3-0 or a 3-1 for Dallas. But that Grands is going to be. I mean, it's the second time Dallas is going to be there. The second time Shanghai is going to be there. Um, and they'll have that experience of playing each other in that first match during the the winners round one.
Yep. I mean, and they've already played each other. I think twice. So they played each other
Twice
in
now.
the winners and in grands before that. So these two teams know exactly what each other is going to run, and they'll know what they're going to be running in this match specifically as well, based off of the first round. So it's going to be hard, especially this being first to four. So
Hmm.
who do
I
you want to give it to?
mm, this is the this is actually probably one of the toughest predictions. Hopefully all year. Hopefully nothing is as close and as sort of not cut and dry as Shanghai Dallas, which I think the first time it seemed a little bit more cut and dry. Obviously Dallas completely disproved everybody. I mm, I as much as I want to give it to Shanghai because I want a different tournament winner, man, that DPS line of Pine, Doha, and Sparkle is just
Too good.
it. Yeah,
And you got
I
to.
think just about. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think everybody else kind of matches up perfectly for these two teams. Fate and Void are basically perfect counters for Hanbin and Fearless. Hanbin obviously having a phenomenal diva run here in June, and Fearless having a very good run as a main tank, and then Void and Fate doing just about the same thing. I think Izzyaki and Fielder match up well. I think Jexa and Lee Jae match up well, but I just think Sparkle, Doha, and Sparkle, Doha, and Pine have a little bit over Lip, Fleta, and Waru because I don't think we just saw Waru get called up or just signed to Shanghai. So I don't think we've seen enough of him yet to know just how good he is. Whereas with Pine, we have the history of Pine.
Yeah.
So we know what we're looking for, and we know how well he can do in certain situations where we don't know if Waru has that yet because he's been in contenders and hasn't been up in the big leagues yet.
And I think you also have to remember that there have been occasions where Flatter and Lep have come out and they've looked a little bit slow and they've looked a little bit like they haven't clicked right away in the opening, and that's what happened during the main Melee finals. They ended up going down 2-0 and obviously and it ended up being 4-2 in the end, but it, yeah, I feel like Sparkle and Doha, and then if Pine ever plays, they always seem to come out swinging. I mean, just the energy Sparkle brings to these games, and Doha especially following behind him most of the time, it's a lot for any team to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, go look back at any VOD from knockout of May Melee to right now, the last knockout they played in June Joust, and you see that energy just every week, consistently every week. Sparkle and Doha are right there, ready to go no matter what. No matter if the rest of Dallas come out slow, Sparkle and Doha give them what they need to jumpstart the whole rest of the team for the rest of the game.
Oh, yeah. So we're gonna go and we're gonna do predictions. I think Dallas wins. I'm gonna go four for them. It's just how many maps do we want to give Shanghai here? I don't feel like this is gonna be a sweep, obviously. Do you do 4-2, 4-3?
I I think because it's a first to four, I think it's a 4-2. Only because I think that Dallas is gonna come out swinging, stun Shanghai the first two maps, and then Shanghai's gonna come back and take two maps off of them because Dallas is gonna get a little bit, in a comfort level where they feel like they have it all figured out. Either that or Shanghai will come out swinging, take the first two maps, and then, you know,
Dallas wins everything.
Dallas is going to pick it up right after that.
I think given the history coming out, so obviously we know every match is going to start with a control match. I think that Dallas have been the more dependable side to win a control game. So I feel like the first eventuality is the more likely one, that Dallas go 2-0 up, and go into sort of cruise control for the next two games, and maybe it goes to 2-2, then they win. And I can easily see Shanghai going 3-2 up, and then maybe Dallas going, oh crap, we need to kick it into gear now, and coming back and winning 4-3.
Right.
I think 4-2 is the safe bet though, which is the exact same score that happened during May Mayday, incidentally, but just
I just,
yeah.
yeah.
So the story of this predictions video is that this is the exact same tournament as the May Melee, just with different heroes.
Yeah, basically.
Alright, so Dallas wins again. Dallas takes stage 2. I don't know what that. I mean, obviously that means that they're in Grand Zero way because they won stage 1, but
Yeah.
they're going to have an astounding lead at this point if they win all the way. And if
I mean, I think that just means that we're going to see a very different playoffs than we did last season because really a different team won every tournament last season. So we had a very different playoffs. So especially for the West, I think it's going to come down to who can hold on to that 3, 4, 5 slot, even that 6 slot in the West, and really who can hold on to number 3 and number 2 in the East because I think Shanghai is going to have such a dominant lead in the East now.
Yeah, either way, they get 2 points for getting this far. So actually, I think they got 3 points. So you got 1 point for. No, they don't, because they didn't make it to win it. So they get 2 points even for losing this. So that puts them ahead even further. We can, I believe, I can go and just double check this, but yeah, it's just gonna give them such a dominant lead either way, just by making it to the grand finals. So yeah, let us know in the comment section below who you are going to be backing going into this tournament. Obviously, we have the underdogs facing off in the first winners round. So if you're backing your videos, let us know. If you're going for the Shanghai or Dallas, I think I'm a Dallas fan, honestly, going into this tournament. I really enjoy watching this team.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas has been a joy to watch, even though they've gone up against my shock a couple of times, and we've had very different uh, outcomes both times we've played. I just really really enjoy watching this Dallas team week in and week out just play to their strengths.
It's going to take a very harsh hero pool to take them off their game at this point. And I mean, going in at the moment, this could change at any point. Keep in mind, it doesn't look like the Summer Showdown is actually going to have hero pools. Um, as far as we know at the moment, so that's only going to be better for Dallas. Obviously, if there are hero pools, I'll make a video going over those and any changes that comes in going into the next tournament structure. But yeah, that is the end of our June Joust coverage, pretty much, apart from possibly a results video at some point, maybe. But I really do hope you enjoyed us breaking down this tournament. We'll obviously be back for the Summer Showdown. Hopefully, we'll get a different tournament structure next time, but who knows? Maybe Dallas will continue to steamroll through this entire season. Yeah,
You never know. I mean, that's what it looked like San Francisco did the past couple of seasons, so it could be about the same.
yeah. So, if you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Say it.
Bye.